Hello, I'm Melanie Nielsen. I thought I'd share my story of my journey of yoga with you all. Some of you know this story, some this will be new for. So, when I was 17, I got introduced to yoga. I wasn't seeking yoga, it was, I guess you could say, seeking me. And a friend of mine who was a philosophy major at the time gave me a gift certificate for, I think it was my birthday, a series of yoga classes. I didn't really know what yoga was. I thought it was philosophy because that person was into philosophy. So I thought we were going to go and sit around and talk philosophy. So I got this gift certificate for classes at a community center. We didn't even have yoga mats at the time. There was no yoga mats. We had a blanket, a towel, and a pillow. And that's what we would bring to the class. And then I got there and soon found out that there was movement involved. And funny, at the time, I was not a very movement oriented person. And for a minute there, at the start of that class, I thought, my friend tricked me into exercise. And I wanted the philosophy. And that teacher was a really good teacher and actually did give some of the philosophy, just little tidbits, and taught us many other things about yoga. And I left there for the first time realizing that I had stress in my life and that I had released the stress from my life. And I just kind of floated out of that class and I really enjoyed it. And it was one of those things I could do with my body that didn't feel like exercise. It had a deeper experience for me and a deeper meaning and a purpose for me. So I continued those classes for some time, and then I moved away from the area and went and moved back out to the Pacific Northwest. At the time, I was living in the Midwest. And at that time, probably in the Midwest, there was like 2 yoga teachers in that entire area of Omaha, Nebraska, of the big city. And then I moved to Portland, and at that time, Portland had like 10 yoga studios out of the whole area. And since throughout the years, I don't know, we probably have 300, 400 studios now. So I went to Portland and tried to find a teacher, and of course, nothing quite compared to my first teacher that I had. So I just did my own practice. And then I got really into herbology and Ayurvedic medicine, and I kind of started going down those routes of education. And eventually went to massage school. And at the end of massage school, I really wanted to dive deeper into yoga, but I wanted it for me. So I wanted a very intensive course that would teach me everything about yoga. So I called up that first yoga teacher and I said, where should I go? This is what I want. I have got 2 months that I can take off of my life, and where should I go? And they told me to go to the Shivananda yoga ashrams. And I didn't know anything about Shivananda. I didn't know why he recommended Shivananda, but his lineage was Paramahansa Yogananda, so it was a completely different lineage. So it was interesting that he didn't have me go to his teachers. So I just trusted his advice and I looked up Shivananda ashrams, and they had them all over the world. So I called up one of the ashrams and I said, well, I see that you have various different programs. Oh, let's backstory it. That teacher said to do the teacher training program. And I said, I'm not going to do the teacher training because I don't want to learn to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. I just want it for me. And he said, well, that's how you're going to learn everything. And so that appealed to my pitta brain. So I was like, okay, I'll learn everything if I take the teacher training. So I called up the Shivananda and I said, okay, I'm interested in the teacher training programs. Are they different at the different locations? And I really wanted the full meal deal. So I didn't want a fluffy version of yoga. And they said that the programs are the same everywhere, and oftentimes the same teachers teach the programs. So I said, okay. So they had India, they had Canada, they had Grass Valley, California, which is where I'm at right now at the ashram here in Grass Valley. And they had the Bahamas. And I had never left America at that time. I was early 20s, maybe 23, 4, something like that. And I said, I want to go to the Bahamas. I'm going to do that. So I went to the Bahamas and I did my first teacher training. It there and I stayed for the advanced training, and I was hooked. My life completely changed after that moment. And I went back home and I felt like I didn't really belong in the world anymore. Like this just wasn't for me. You know, there was something majorly missing, and I missed the community, I missed the philosophy, I missed people understanding the viewpoints of which yogis look out through, how they see the world. And I wanted to talk to other people that saw the world like that. And I didn't find that in my area. Even with all the yoga studios that was there, it was getting to become more focused on exercise and less on the philosophy. And so I ended up falling into opening up a yoga studio. So I hung out with a friend of mine who was an herbologist. I was still thinking I was going to be an herbologist. That was my career track that I was going, or a naturopathic doctor. So I was going on that track, and I would hang out with this friend who owned an herb store. So I would go in to learn more of the Chinese herbs because I had already studied a bunch of the Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic herbs. And every time I'd go in, they said, well, you should teach classes here. You did the training. I'm like, I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not teaching classes. And every time I came in, he brought it up and he said, you should teach classes. You should teach classes. And I said, I don't want to teach classes. And then next time I came in, he had made a flyer, had 8 people signed up, and I guess I'm teaching classes. So that following Tuesday at 5:30, I taught my first yoga class. And that class got full, and we had a wait list for another class, and then another class, and another class. And pretty soon I outgrew his space. And at that point, I was, again, early 20s. I knew nothing about business. And all I knew is that I wanted community, and I loved yoga, and I wanted more people to talk to about yoga. And so it was fulfilling that niche with folks coming to my classes, and I could have my yoga community again. So I decided, well, what would it take to open up a space? I mean, I outgrew his space. I've got people who want, more people are on a waiting list. I guess I should look at renting a retail space. And so I had no money. I had a credit card with a $10,000 limit on it. And that's it. I mean, I had no job at that time either. I mean, I was teaching yoga classes, but they weren't making a ton of money. But I felt, that was like the next step. It just seemed like that was the most obvious next thing in my viewpoint. So I ended up getting the credit card with the checks, and I wrote a check for rent, and I wrote the credit card for supplies, and I opened up a really small studio in Vancouver, Washington. And it just happened. And it was a small space because, I was not expecting it to get as big as it did. And after about a year, we outgrew that space, and I got a much bigger space after that. And through the 20 years plus that I had this studio, we had 4 different locations that we grew out of and into the next location. And yoga just happened. Again, yoga coming to me just happened. The yoga studio just happened. And then the time for it to dissolve happened too. So when COVID hit and everything was shut down, it was too much of a struggle to keep it open. So I closed the doors and moved to the online platform, which I was resistant to at the beginning. But now I'm enjoying it. I'm liking it quite a bit. So I taught yoga at the yoga studio that I owned for 20 some years, and taught teacher trainings and therapy trainings and all kinds of workshops that we had there, and all the people that came, and it was lovely and it was beautiful. I'm so grateful for that experience. And now I've come back to the ashram. So here for the last few years, I've been coming back more often to the ashram and recapturing the community that I had here from so long ago. And I am enjoying, I'm going to hear a little car go by. I am enjoying this time to immerse back for me. And of course, whatever comes immersing into myself, I inevitably share it out into the world. So, spending much more time here at the ashram and writing and reflecting and sharing that with you all. So, I don't know what the next journey is. I think it will just happen. Right now, I'm on a sabbatical pilgrimage, and after the ashram here, I will just continue on driving across America and meeting people and exploring the lands and feeling the land with which I'm sitting on and sharing it all with you. And then we'll see what happens after that. So I hope you are well, and I look forward to seeing you more.